What if? I'm going to be doing a bunch of what ifs in the future, not just versus videos or scaling things. Instead, it's going to be what if stories. Maybe if something happened differently in one story, or timeline, or swapping characters around, like this one will be. Today I ask, what would happen if we replaced the Heisei era Godzilla with Monsterverse Godzilla? Now, as you'll know if you've been paying attention to my channel at all, the Heisei era is significantly more powerful than the Monsterverse, and I doubt that'll change anytime soon. So in order to make this more interesting, we're going to be changing the rules. Godzilla will enter into the Heisei era with power equal to that of his Heisei self. Meaning, for each entry he will be bumped to the base level of Heisei Godzilla at that period of time, so that he stands, any kind of chance. He'll be swapping in during the 1980s. Now, during this time, Godzilla is still asleep, but is awakened by a mighty volcanic eruption. With this, his dormancy ends, and he begins to explore the world around him, leading him into Tokyo in 1984. Not actually rampaging through the city, but causing a good bit of destruction. The UN decides to use its newest weapon, the Super X, to attempt to deter Godzilla. Its standard missiles and such don't really do much damage. But what Monsterverse Godzilla doesn't know is that it's packing powerful cadmium missiles. Cadmium being a material that coats radiation, making it lethal to Godzilla. After taking such a crippling blow, he finishes off the machine with a blast of atomic breath and heads back into the ocean. Now, something to keep in mind is that Heisei Godzilla has much more impressive regeneration abilities than Monsterverse. This allows his cells to mutate into new creatures and regenerate entire bodies in relatively short spans of time, such as Biollante and Space Godzilla. But in order to not just cut the roster down in half, we're going to say that Heisei Godzilla's cells somehow still existed before he was teleported away. This still leads to the creation of Biollante, but also infused with Monsterverse Godzilla DNA as well. Heisei Godzilla DNA is seemingly more aggressive as it transformed the Rose and human DNA into, this damn behemoth. Having rested himself near the core of the earth, Godzilla has healed from the cadmium damage. Noteworthy, however, is the fact he is able to sense the presence of other kaiju, and Heisei could do the same. However, Heisei Godzilla is a much lonelier creature, seeking companionship to not be so hated by everything. Monsterverse Godzilla, though, has a job to do, and that's to keep the world in balance. So when he detects Biollante, he swims right over there to make it submit or kill it. Biollante in the main timeline already lashed out at Godzilla simply for being there, so I see no reason why the same wouldn't happen here. Now, while his power is equal to that of Heisei Godzilla, Monsterverse Godzilla is seemingly more vulnerable to a lot of other things, such as abilities like acid, for example. In the first fight with Rose Biollante, Godzilla uses his atomic breath to deal heavy damage as Heisei Godzilla did, before moving on, leaving the hybrid to die. However, he should have finished her off, because now she has become more powerful, and is transformed into a beast. Much larger and more powerful, Biollante begins to hunt down Godzilla, who is attempting to head back for the sea, taking him through Osaka Trap, where a deadly trap is waiting for him. The ANEB, the anti-nuclear energy bacteria, something more dangerous than even the cadmium. This proved to be much more quickly effective than even the cadmium. Furthermore, this led to Godzilla struggling in his initial battle with Biollante. However, I don't know if Monsterverse Godzilla would just roar at single people at this point in time, though maybe if he gets sick enough of their crap, he'll put them down. So ANEB is not delivered to Godzilla, and he retains a power level higher than that of Biollante. Once the beast pounces, the king finds himself at a bit of a disadvantage. Biollante's tentacles have become much stronger, she has many more of them, and now they can actually deal heavy damage, stabbing deep into his flesh and even his bones. The atomic breath is essential in this battle because Biollante can quickly regenerate wounds that would be fatal to nearly any other creature. Blasting her core, her limbs, and her main body doesn't seem to do much. His only chance is to blast right through her head. In the original timeline, this is how Heisei Godzilla defeated Biollante, dealing lethal damage to an immortal entity. Monsterverse Godzilla does not have such a neat trick though, and simply has to just keep attacking and attacking. Perhaps this means to defeat her, he will use a very large blast of atomic breath like he did to blast into the core of the Earth. Exhausted, Godzilla returns to the sea. However, because the Godzillasaurus still existed in this time period, the future people attempt to remove it from history, claiming that Godzilla destroys Japan in their timeline. But the picture they show is unfamiliar to these people. The Godzilla they know doesn't look like this, but still they take their concerns and attempt to remove the dinosaur from history. This, of course, fails. But since that would just bring Heisei Godzilla into this hypothetical, we're just going to say that they moved him to a different time period, which may lead to more timeline shenanigans down the road. However, it leads to a familiar foe to Monsterverse Godzilla, King Ghidorah, but different from the one he knows. Not quite as large, but carrying new tricks. For one, he's faster, over 3 times more in the air than his original foe. This makes it harder for him to battle with the creature. While Heisei Godzilla seemingly tried to initially make contact and communicate with King Ghidorah, Legendary is not playing by those rules. He's attacking immediately, to which the future terrorists respond with King Ghidorah attacking right back. The two seem about evenly matched, their beams trading blows and dealing relatively little damage at first. But something to note is that Heisei Godzilla was actually developing the spiral breath in this battle. Monsterverse Godzilla has no such trick at this point in time, since he's only in his base form. This means that the battle will be much longer and more drawn out. Being equal in strength, but having a slight weight advantage, MV Godzilla decides to try to get up close and personal. However, the mass spamming of gravity beams forces him on the defensive. While having relatively similar strength, the King Ghidorah of this timeline uses incredible abilities like spin gravity and quark gluon plasma, in addition to destroying gravity and the many other things that Showa and Heisei Ghidorah can do, which I covered in multiple videos already, so go check those out if you want the real details. This means that the gravity beams deal massively more damage to Monsterverse Godzilla, who can only really respond with blasts of atomic breath and a nuclear pulse. Ultimately, King Ghidorah is defeated, but Godzilla is left incredibly drained. Because of this, he slowly wanders off to the nearest nuclear power source, desperate to fuel himself. Still under the belief that Godzilla will in fact destroy Japan, especially after he begins a nuclear feast, Emmy and the other characters decide to hatch their plan for Mecha King Ghidorah. Filling himself up, Monsterverse Godzilla not only begins to heal his wounds, but now realizes that the threats in this new world are much more powerful than he was expecting. As such, he decides not just to restore himself, but increase his power. This allows him to energize himself, or supercharge if you prefer. In this new state, it's commonly believed that Godzilla will in fact destroy Japan, even though he has no intention to. So he begins to head back towards Tokyo, especially when a certain cyborg arrives from the future. Mecha King Ghidorah is even more powerful than the base version, and boasts a number of impressive abilities and new weapons, like its massive shock charge that could overwhelm a Godzilla who tanks lightning bolts with no difficulty. Monsterverse Godzilla also finds himself overwhelmed by these new weapons, but given his increase in strength, he's still able to deal heavy damage to the cyborg. Seeing how destructive the battle has become, Godzilla tries to tackle Ghidorah into the ocean, a strategy he's used on his own version multiple times. Because of this, Emmy decides better now than never to take Godzilla away. Flying out over the Great Pacific Ocean, Godzilla decides to use his nuclear pulse to its maximum power, losing the supercharged state that he was in and crashing into the sea along with the cyborg. The Hydra is downed, the king not so much. However, since the threat is disposed of, and he has restored himself, he simply swims off into the deep, not to be disturbed for another year. Another year passes, and a great meteor strikes into the ocean, nearby to the Monster King. Unlike his Heisei self, Godzilla can't benefit from the meteor crashing down, and in fact, it enrages him, because it deals heavy damage to the global ecology, shifting tectonic plates, boiling the ocean, crumbling glaciers, and also awakening two dangerous opponents. Mothra, but not the one he's familiar with, and Battra, the god of destruction. Similar to himself, Battra is an aggressive protector of the natural order, one who destroys everything in his path that can possibly threaten the Earth. Mothra, in his own timeline, was an ally to the king, and feeling something similar from this new Mothra, he decides to try to make nice, even though to her, he is alien. Upon finding her egg hatching, the larva attacks out of shock and fear, to which Godzilla tries to handle her without doing any lethal damage. Battra, however, is not here for pleasantries. He's here to fight to the death. Knocking his alternate self aside, he begins an epic clash with Godzilla, taking them to the depths of the sea. As their battle rages on, it's clear to Godzilla that Battra is a worthy opponent, exchanging in beam battles and physical strikes with the king until both eventually fight so hard that they crack the continent beneath them, sinking into the Earth's mantle. Closer to the radiation of the Earth's core, Godzilla is able to gain an advantage. Battra is seemingly subdued, at least for now. Noticing that this Earth is not hollow, he begins to try to find his way out through a magma chamber, which leads him on a path to Mount Fuji. Mothra returns to Infant Island, but heads towards Japan, sensing that her fairies are in danger. The Shobijin's magical presence also confuses Godzilla. He's not familiar with stuff like this, but begins to track Mothra down as she rampages. Emerging from the depths below, Battra also arrives to attack Mothra in her cocoon state. As the two imago forms clash, Godzilla emerges from Mount Fuji. While maser weaponry is powerful and can burn a creature's cells, enabling them to bypass physical defense, these aren't enough to stop Godzilla, especially after he's absorbed radiation from the Earth's core. More powerful than ever before, his appearance has also changed. His dorsal plates have went from simply straight spikes into more leaf-shaped structures, more durable as well. It's a good thing that he's evolved himself, because Battra and Mothra are more powerful than ever before. He quickly deduces the situation with Battra's intent to wipe out humanity, an event that'll devastate the planet and lead to untold extinction and destruction. Battra is a difficult opponent, but with Godzilla attacking him, Mothra deduces, and perhaps they can form an alliance. Together, it's not hard for the two to subdue Battra, with Godzilla placing his foot down upon him, demanding that he yields or is killed. Since he's already awake, and having a score to settle with Godzilla later, Battra instead turns to the depths of space, a planet-destroying meteor soon to come, so he flies off to deal with the threat before it becomes an issue, and turns towards Mothra. Not the one he's familiar with, of course, but perhaps he's finally found a creature he can call friend. Mothra and Godzilla then leave the city in peace to face threats unknown. While I'd like to continue on through the entire Heisei era, I also want to touch on the extended Heisei material, such as Orochi the Eight-Headed Dragon and the Mothra Leo trilogy, as I think Monsterverse Godzilla's presence could make those more interesting. I'd want to touch upon extended Heisei material that most of the public doesn't know about. The timeline has much more than just the 7 films involved in it, regarding Godzilla, Mothra, and other kaiju. So in order to see part 2, make sure to like and subscribe, as well as check out the rest of the channel, and I'll be doing more of these type of videos in the future. Speaking of the future, I think it'd be nice if the world could give those less fortunate a better future. Not the smoothest transition, I know, but I want to help out the current charity running in the fandom called Gifts from Goji from my arch nemesis Godzilla guy. While his and his friends' takes on who would win in monster fights aren't the best, The effort he's putting in to support St. Jude's Children Foundation is something that I could never really match with my very small channel. So I figured I might as well just shout the charity out and give it its dues. There's still about a month to donate, and any amount you can will certainly help. Powerful creatures from ancient Japanese mythology appear to battle the King of Monsters, but are swiftly defeated. However, one will become a real thorn in his side. This is Orochi, the 8-headed dragon, a malevolent god consumed by his own evil that sought to destroy the entire world. Defeated and sealed away thousands of years ago, he has returned more powerful than ever, landing on Earth's moon and seeking to destroy the entire planet. Godzilla doesn't like this very much, but he cannot attack Orochi from Earth. Monsterverse Godzilla sadly cannot breathe in space, but Mothra can, so she flies off to confront the evil dragon. A fierce battle ensues. Orochi has become stronger since his past encounter, having grown significantly larger and developing his abilities further. While Mothra would have annihilated Orochi from his previous attack, this new Orochi is more dangerous and puts even the God Moth on the back foot. The two exchange energy beams, magical attacks, and physical strikes. But Mothra knows she will need assistance for this one, so she turns towards Earth and flies back. It is against her better judgment to lead a threat to the planet, but if she's defeated here, then Orochi will destroy it anyway. Sensing the return of his ally, Godzilla prepares for battle. Charging up his energy to its fullest from the start, he fires the blast of atomic breath right at Orochi, who is chasing Mothra. Distracted by the goddess, who then quickly pivots over the beam, the dark god is blasted by atomic power. Damaged but not killed, Orochi turns his sights to Godzilla, the two clashing, with the Monster King being a more physically adept melee fighter, and so at first gaining the upper hand, but Orochi counters with fire blasts and lightning beams, which cannot miss, with their 99% accuracy rate. Atomic breath is fired in turn, damaging Orochi but not significantly. Godzilla knows that this will be a battle the likes of which he has never seen before. He's faced multi-headed creatures, and while one could regenerate, and the other could not, none could use these strange powers. Orochi launches fire from all of his heads. Godzilla returns fire with atomic breath, the two beams clashing overhead, the world itself shaking around them. The oceans boil, clouds form overhead, thunder sparks in the sky. Godzilla pushes himself, his eyes glowing blue, his body glowing with intense radiation, as he fires a super powerful beam that sends Orochi back. Catching his breath, the King of Monsters tries to compose himself. Orochi is burned, but not down. Lightning that cannot miss blasts from his eyes, scorching the King of Monsters with special abilities that he cannot truly resist. He just hopes his body can withstand the immense pressure. After a super close call with King Ghidorah, and Battra proving to be an equal foe, the likes of Orochi are something that Godzilla has never faced before. These close calls get him thinking while fighting against the enemy. Perhaps he needs not only to power up in order to stay ahead of the competition, but also develop new abilities to counter these strange powers. He noticed that the moths can evolve in Ghidorah as well, gaining metal features. Perhaps it's time Godzilla himself evolved. Thoughts for later. Right now he has a fight to win. He charges up, his dorsal plates crackling with electricity as he fires a nuclear pulse, spanning 30 miles across. Finally, a few Orochi heads are knocked off the body. Godzilla goes Hail Mary, blasting atomic breath and nuclear pulses to finish Orochi off. However, Orochi's blasts can also interact with and destroy space-time barriers. Godzilla's atomic breath can pierce into space-time distortion, but the god's magic is superior to his space ability. The war of attrition is favoring Orochi. Mothra returns, however, and spinning a special magical seal restricts Orochi's movements. She tells Godzilla to do it now, finish him off. To which Godzilla nods his head. His tail raises, drawing from this intensely radioactive world. He summons all his reserves, energy coming up from the tip of his tail through his back, flashing through his entire body. At first blue like normal, spreading through his chest, his legs, his arms, even his eyes, glowing bright, but then he charges further, increasing his power. Mothra assists, donating some of nature's energy to the King of Monsters, before he fires a beam so intense So powerful, it glows a bright, pinkish red. Orochi's body is struck, and a huge explosion takes place. Had that been aimed at the ground, the entire planet would have been destroyed. The evil god is slain, but Godzilla is in incredibly bad shape, horrifically wounded, and out of energy. He needs to rest, now, before the next challenger comes to destroy the planet. Mothra says she'll take care of the world in the meantime, so Godzilla begins a search for a powerful energy supply. And he finds one. Bass Island, credible source of radiation. Massive uranium deposits that Godzilla can feed upon. But any prize worth fighting for will usually have someone who wants the gift. He is forced to return to the bottom of the sea for now, to hopefully build back up his strength before he challenges these creatures. Mankind is also busy at work. While Godzilla and Mothra prove benevolent to a decent extent, they are willing to attack, as are much more malicious creatures. So humans decide to build a counterattack, a defense. Inspired by the strongest monster on Earth, they begin constructing Mecha Godzilla. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time.